All right, then we're ready.
Okay, we're good.
Good evening, everyone. It is Tuesday, June the 4th, 2024. I'm John DeWanzik, and this is the regular meeting of the Avon Lake Board of Municipal Utilities. Everyone on the board is here tonight. To my right, Mr. Ricky and Mrs. Schnabel. To my left, Mr. Abram and Mr. Rush. With us tonight from the staff is Mr. Monroe, the Chief Utilities Executive, and Mr. Urinich, the Chief of Utility Operations, and Mr. Logan, the Finance Director for one of the term. He has another title.
Business and Financial Coordinator.
Okay. And in the audience tonight, we have Ms. Gentry and Mr. Zimmerman. Ms. Gentry is a councilwoman. Mr. Zimmerman is a citizen at large so far. And let's see, we are being delivered to you by way of electronic media on Facebook and YouTube tonight. There are comments available to those who are in that audience to make during the meeting. Mr. Urinich keeps an eye on those. And when we get to public speakers, which will be shortly, your comments will be read as they come in. And we will be taking votes from the board as voice votes throughout the meeting. It'll take 3 of any type to make the motion pass or fail. The exception to that, we will do a roll call vote for a motion to have an executive session, which there is one scheduled for tonight. At that point, again, majority takes 3 to pass. Mr. Rush, did I miss anything?
You covered it.
Thank you. So having said all that, we will move to the first order of business, which is the approval of minutes from the May 21st meeting. Are there any comments on those from the board? Hearing none, they are approved as submitted. The next item that comes up on you fast is the public speakers. Any public speakers from the electronic world?
I do not have any public speakers. Mr.
Ladies and gentlemen, any comments?
So, I have a couple of questions that came up in our meeting last night that I
Okay,
know how to answer, so I'm gonna ask you guys. There were some questions regarding the property that's being purchased, and there was a question about what the property is being used for, and I wasn't really sure how to answer that.
okay. I'll let Mr. Monroe take that to start with, and we'll add to it as
Yes.
necessary.
So the property that we're purchasing with, you're talking about the power plant property?
Yeah.
Okay, ALERG property. That property is contiguous to our other properties that we own. So that is part of it. We do intend to work out an agreement with Lorain County Metro Parks for a multi-purpose trail on that property. And this is obviously, we're in our due diligence period on it. So if we close on the property, that these would be things that we would down the line, look at. But we also look at the potential economic development of having the property that could be developed for commercial use in the future.
Mr. Monroe, would you be able to say that we also plan to exchange properties in order to acquire other adjacent properties and so on?
Not at this time.
Okay.
Not, because those are ongoing negotiations.
Okay, but gives you a picture of it in general. Okay, Mr. Zimmerman, anything?
I have several questions, if I may.
Okay, well, limit you to 3 minutes, so give me your top couple. We have
I
another-
a couple of follow-ups.
Another opportunity later too.
Okay.
I had a couple of other questions too.
Okay.
So, we wanted to schedule a meeting with, Steve Gross and Rob. I'll follow up with you on that one. Just
Okay.
because we had further questions that probably shouldn't be addressed here. But then, the other question was when did you guys start negotiating the property?
I don't know I don't know the exact date, but it was last year.
Yeah, okay. Summertime-ish, I don't know.
It was probably even before that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, I'm sorry.
No, you're
Go
fine.
ahead.
Mr. Zimmerman?
Thank you. One of my first question is, was there ever a risk assessment done over at that property in regards to when the mercury had been discovered?
Mr. Monroe?
Not to my knowledge. That would be, I think, a question for the current owners. We did not perform a risk assessment. Part of our due diligence in buying the property is doing a preliminary risk assessment and then a full risk assessment as well.
And then, did you guys approve the discharge to the stormwater sewer that bypassed what had been going to 002 and changed and rerouted to the west side of the CEI plant?
We
Can
did not.
'Cause for the sake of the board, you like somehow explain what you're talking about with 002 and 001?
Well, according to Mr. Shamir's presentation last night, there was a time where the drainage water from the pond that was where the coal plant, where the coal pile used to be, was being pumped to 002 to be treated before it was released into the lake. And then there became a time where it wasn't being sent all the way to 002. It was being dumped into the creek that was right there. And then there became a time after that where now it was being sent to the west and sent back into a 108-inch pipe that was being dumped into the lake. So my question is how did all three of these things come to happen over time, where the only place that it was being treated was when it was being pumped to 002, which was a pond right by the lake on the east side of the plant?
I don't know if you,
So on the first two, as far as the connection across the street and the reference to discharge into the creek, I cannot speak to those because we did not have involvement on those. As far as the connection to the storm system of the retention pond that's there, ultimately the connection came via the city of Avon Lake. And the surrounding that is the city engineer, Chris Howard, had a conflict of interest. He's a managing partner at Bramhall Engineering. Bramhall did the design of that, so he had a conflict of interest. Then Mayor Zilka at the time contacted me. I'm sorry, the 3 minutes were up, but I'll finish my
okay, and
my
then we'll
answer.
go on later with that.
And he contacted me and said, Mr. Howard has a conflict of interest. Would Mr. Gaydar, as a professional engineer, review the plans on behalf of the city? And I said, well, I cannot instruct him to do so, but I can request and ask him if he's comfortable doing that. I did request if he was comfortable doing that. Mr. Gaydar, as a professional engineer, said yes. So he acted as the representative for the city of Avon Lake. He reviewed the plans that were submitted and he approved those plans.
Can I have one last question? Who submitted the plans?
ALERG is the property owner.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's then move on to, first of all, Mr. Urinich, anything from the electronic land?
No, Mr. Chairman.
All right, let's move on to expenditures with your, I'm sorry, my bad. Correspondence, do we have anything, Mr. Monroe?
I do not have any correspondence this evening.
Okay, let's move on to expenditures. Would someone like to make
I
a
will.
motion?
I will.
Go ahead, Mr. Abram.
I move to approve Avon Lake regional water expenses from May 17th through May 30th, 2024.
Okay, there's a motion made, second by Mr. Ricky. Discussion,
I don't have anything.
Mr. Ricky.
Year number 16, Jared Larson, looks like educational reimbursement. And can you just tell me what he is now acquired or where he is in his education
So he is working on his master's degree.
in mechanical?
Yep, and he is taking one class at a time, so
Okay.
it's a very slow process. I believe this is his fourth class, I believe. So he
Okay.
has a little bit to go, but he's working hard towards it.
I think it's a good thing that we have employees trying to better themselves, and the tuition reimbursement program obviously is a big help for those people. And I hope we can keep him on a long time. And I hear good things about the young man, and I'm glad to see he's trying to better himself. And I think that's kudos to him.
Anything else, Mr. Ricky?
The Williams and the Williams thing here, W.W. Williams, items 30, 31, or 30, 31, 32. Equipment maintenance, inspect to
Generators.
Oh, generators. Okay, we got a bunch of those. Okay. I just wasn't sure what it was. I just couldn't figure out the hieroglyphics that we use to put that together. So those are our portable generators at different lift stations.
Permanent
generators.
Permanent generators at different lift stations, and we're doing some PM on them and making sure that they're in good working condition.
Yes.
All right, very good. That's all I have, sir.
Anyone else? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
The motion is approved. Okay, next item, Mr. Monroe, is the budget update following on Mr. Logan's presentation.
Yes,
earlier.
and this was really just, again, anyone that may have missed our work session, but at the same time, we want to make sure that our viewers out there know that our work session topic was a budget update for the board through 5 months of the year. It's positive. Our revenues are exceeding our expenditures. So we continue that trend to remain for the rest of the year. And we also discussed the financial dashboard that we are developing for the board to provide them with the necessary information and alerts that they would like to see. So as we continue to work on that, we will have follow-up discussions with board members.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Monroe. Any questions from the board on that? All right, let's move on to the next item, chemical distribution supplies bids, Mr. Monroe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We did have, this is our biannual chemical supplies and our biannual distribution supplies bids. Bids were opened on May 17th. We received on chemicals, we received several bids. And overall, we were seeing a good trend that quite a few of them did come down in price.
Mhm.
May not be a lot, but and it certainly is not what it was pre-pandemic. But the biannual chemicals, we do have recommended motion to approve those. We have the biannual distribution supplies bid, and on that, we did only receive one bid from Core and Main on all of the various items that we bid. So we do have two recommended motions to award these various contracts. based on the engineer's certified bid tabulation that as presented.
Okay. While I'm thinking of it, since I opened the meeting, we have been joined by Ms. Connie Carr from Sealy Savage Law Firm. She will be guiding us through some of our work that we have in the executive session. So welcome, Ms. Carr. If you'd like to sit at the table here, you're welcome to.
I'm fine for right
Okay. So anyway, we have two recommended motions. Would someone like to take the first one?
I can read it.
Okay.
I move to authorize the CUE to execute the necessary contracts with vendors for the supply of chemicals in accordance with the certified engineer's bid tabulation as presented.
Thank you, Mrs. Schnabel. Would someone like to make
I'll
a
second
second? Mr. Abram, discussion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Rush.
just for the viewing public, there's 11 different bidders on various items throughout here, and we're picking the best price from each one of the companies. So it's a quite lengthy process, but, you know, we're looking for the best bang for our dollars.
Yes.
Right, and I believe Mr. Monroe indicated that some of the prices are actually down from last year.
Yes, for instance, one of our big ones, which is chlorine, the current price that we have right now is $1,790 per ton. The new price is $1,750 per ton. So $40 per ton less on this bid, which is good. But in comparison, we were paying $470 per ton.
So we're going up
Before
by a
the-
factor of 4.
before the supply chain issues. Again, that's just one example. Carbon, which is another one of our chemicals that we use at the water filtration plant. The current price is $2,093 per ton. The new bid price is $2,000 per ton. And we estimate we use approximately 80 tons of that in a 6-month period. So that can be a significant
Sure.
savings.
Sure. Okay, any other questions on any of
I
that?
just wanted to ask, but the liquid chlorine, in the future, there shouldn't be any more problem that we had in the past. Getting a bid.
When we switched to the sodium hypochlorite, the liquid, that was also a supply chain issue. But if you recall our pilot program that we have with TechWin, that we're going to demo a on-site generation system that we would generate that product on-site for us, would be really the way that we would hold off any supply chain issues. So we would not be subject to that.
Naturally, Mr. Logan, based on, the apparent, squeezing of the nickel by Mr. Abram, we would want to know how the TechWin system is performing financially, because you would have to scale it if you were going to use it for your main supply. So you'd have to say, it makes you this much money to do it this way versus buying it.
Mr.
Just
Chairman.
more, stuff for your busy street. Mr. Ricky.
I want to echo Mr. Rush's comments, because I remember the last time or 2 times ago, a year ago, when we looked at these, we had 2 or 3 bidders for all this stuff, where people just were not in a position to make commitments for 6 months out. So I think this is really encouraging in the economy that there's actually some competition out there. Again, people are getting back to what we would call, I guess, normal operations, and we're getting some competition on bids, which is really healthy for everybody, quite honestly, and it's good to see.
Okay, anyone else with comments, questions? All in favor of the motion as made, say aye.
Aye.
The motion passes. Okay, we have a recommended motion number 2. Would someone like to make it?
I won't, Chairman.
Mr. Abram?
I authorize the CUE to execute a contract with Core and Main for the supply of various water distribution supplies in accordance with the certified engineer's bid tabulation as presented to the board.
Thank you, Mr. Abram. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Ricky. Discussion.
What bid platform do we use when we put for these particular items?
So on the majority of our bids, I would say probably 99% of the bids that we solicit, we use Bid Express online bidding platform. That is, we piggybacked with the state of Ohio. That is the platform that they utilize also. And it's much more efficient for us, number one, but it also reaches more, I guess, more individuals as they built the system out over the years. Vendors are registered in the system and get notifications. In the case of our distribution supplies, we've had over the years another company, Trumbull Supply, I think you're familiar with. They've been bought out and merged with Core and Main. Really, the only other competitor in this area is Ferguson, which we do work with Ferguson. We have our contract for our water meters with Ferguson. But on the distribution supplies, I have inquired with them as to why they do not submit a bid, and they feel that the amount of items that we solicit bids for, in the amount of work that they would put into a bid, they know that they're not competitive on price with Core and Main for these items.
If we did receive additional bids, we would do the same thing in terms of picking and choosing and awarding based on the best price.
Yes, which we have done in the past. On this bid tabulation, we have a total of, there's 46 numbers, but there's A's, B's, C's. So you can see there's several items. We have done, the way we word our bid specifications is we will award multiple contracts. So if another company is lower on just one item, we would still award to them for that one item. So.
And there are just a few items that there was no bid even from Core and Main.
Correct.
Well, I might remark that Core and Main, as far as I'm aware, are a nationwide firm. And when you get down to just one nationwide firm, that's where supply chain issues can really suddenly crop up for everyone. So we probably ought to be keeping an eye on the marketplace and talking to our let's say allies and friends in Ohio, EPA and others to see how they want to address this type of thing, because it becomes like anything else. You don't want to put together a system with Scotch tape and wishful thinking. So I would be concerned if nobody else is bidding, quite honestly.
And yes, and we are as well. In an emergency situation, if Core and Main cannot supply an item that's on our contract, we can purchase, in an emergency situation, purchase from wherever we need to.
Well, do you know where you would need to? That's kind of what I'm getting at.
Ferguson is a supplier of a lot of these items. It's just price wise, they're not as competitive.
But you could get onesie, twosies.
Yes, yes, and we have. There has been, in the last couple of years, there have been instances on certain items that Core and Main says, we don't have an inventory of that. We don't have it. We start making the calls, and Ferguson has been able to supply us with a 1-inch meter setter, or something along those lines.
Well, we do have a certain inventory of the stuff.
Yes, we do.
On hand, so it's not like we use the last one.
We keep a very good inventory of our distribution supplies that in past years, we've had other water utilities that have contacted us. We can't get this part for 2 weeks. Do you have it that we could order it and have it drop shipped to you? But we take one out of your inventory, and obviously we track that. But So our inventory is robust, but we, it's a balancing act. You don't want to have too much inventory just sitting here.
Nor do you want to lend it too much.
Correct.
Even though you want to be mutual aid, you don't want to be mutual fail, so.
Absolutely.
To let the board know that Core Maine has an office locally in Amherst, Ohio. So
They have offices all over. In fact,
I just,
the reason I say it's a nationwide thing, I was somewhere else and I saw a guy wearing a Core and Main shirt and I said, I know what that is, you know what I mean? And like, he said they have like all 48 states anyway.
yeah, well, there's one local one down west.
Alaska, but
There's one in our county,
yeah.
Amherst, Ohio. So just want the board to know that.
Yeah, well, they have a couple of big accounts out here. Okay, so any other discussion on that item? We'll take a vote. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Okay, let's see. Next item is the project updates, and the spotlight goes to Mr. Urinich.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The power plant, there's no update on that tonight.
Okay.
ETL Design Services, we made some progress. We've had a couple of purchase orders issued. As discussed multiple times in past meetings, not very successful negotiating with the railroads. We made the decision to go under the public right-of-way at the Moore Road crossing. Purchase order was issued to ECS Midwest. They're going to be doing the subsurface geotechnical. So that's going to be taking core samples, verifying all of the conditions of the soils and the base there. A separate PO for SAM surveying and mapping. They're going to be kind of like we've been doing at the water plant, the vector, the potholing, verifying that the actual physical locations of any underground infrastructure, matches up with the drawings, and that will be converted to our GPS, our GIS map, as they go through and develop those plans to run water lines underneath the road crossing. Once they complete all of that, Bramhall Engineering is going to be completing the 6 additional base maps, laying out the design. Any questions on that project?
Will we close the railroad track when this happens?
No,
It'll be a boring.
it'd be a boring.
Okay.
And that presents even in the public right of way, that presents its own challenges, because we still have to go through the railroad in their permitting
Yeah.
process. And, for instance, we have to hire a structural engineer to do our bore and receiving pits and the shoring that needs to be in those. They require a structurally engineered plan for that. So, while of course that's safety, we want to make sure we're safe in doing so. It's just these are extra steps that we take.
But those steps we would have had to have taken whether we were in the right of way or where we were going to go anyway.
Well, the typically though, that's something that's put on the contractor to take care of when they're as part of their contract. Whereas we have to do this in advance, even to get a permit.
Oh, my goodness.
So again, it's a different set of difficulties with the railroad.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ricky. Anyone else with questions? Okay, Mr. Urinich, please proceed.
The water filtration plant improvements. Great Lakes Construction, continuing their work on verifying underground assets in the areas of the expansion of the filter expansion and the chemical feed building. They've also been working on removing, so the area where the new filters will be constructed was originally a settling basin for the 1926 plant. When we did the demolition of those structures in the last project, we did leave the base concrete that was left during that project. There's areas of that they're working on demoing, removing, so that they'll be able to lay a new base down for the extension of that building. They've also been going through the chemical feed areas of the plant, equipment that is going to be replaced that isn't in use or needed for any redundancy now. They've been working on kind of cleaning up those areas. As they really get into the construction of the plant, they're trying to find ways to, make future parts of the project easier.
Okay, any questions on the foregoing? Go ahead, Mr. Urinich.
The SCADA communication upgrade. Last Thursday, we had the opportunity to meet with members of Ohio Homeland Security and CISA, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. So they offer a lot of free services to government organizations, utilities. They came out and performed a physical security assessment at all of our locations. They went through everything as far as entry and exit, our keypads, our cards for access to the buildings. We walked around the entire property here, took a look at all the fencing, really anything that would be, kind of your physical security. We went to the water tower, the Moore Road pump station, water plant, water reclamation facility. They're going to be preparing reports for each of those locations, kind of documenting our existing securities that we have in place, making recommendations of, things that maybe we could improve upon, things we would want to look for in the future. But being a free service like that, we've taken a lot of effort to improve our security, but, they're kind of specialists in that area. That's going to give us a good path forward as far as what can be done to increase that. In a separate meeting in the future, we're working on setting up a cybersecurity analysis. So that's something we have third-party contractors that handle our IT and infrastructure, OT. They can come out, take a look at all of the measures that we have taken and kind of provide the same types of recommendations. So that's something that we look forward to. We're pretty proud of the efforts we've made so far, but anything that can be done to improve it, we're happy to consider. And then when we go for the request for qualifications for the IT master plan, anything that we notice within that, that's something that can be addressed there as well. We have also the fiber optic converters, going back to that issue we had earlier. Those are shipping. They shipped today. They plan on programming them at their location next week, and they're scheduled to be on site June 17th to make the installation of that.
Okay. Questions for Mr. Urinich?
Yeah, so this, I don't recall seeing us do this before. Is this a new thing that we've done where we had Homeland Security and the cybersecurity?
There was a vulnerability assessment that was completed a number of years ago. Former CUO, Rick Eberly, he worked with Homeland Security on that. At the state level and the federal level, they've changed a little bit their structure. So CISA, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, is new to us. I am registered when the pandemic hit, and we had to ensure that during any lockdowns that obviously employees could get to work. I joined as a member of the Ohio Homeland Security so that we were able to have credentials assigned as essential workers to all of our employees to ensure that we could have operators at the water plant and the wastewater plant. Through that, I forged a few acquaintances and met some individuals, and I'm registered as a liaison officer with Ohio Homeland Security. What that allows is classified information that can be disseminated to me if it pertains to water, wastewater. And I attended one of their briefings last month. It was held over in Independence for Northeast Ohio. And through the discussions with some of the individuals, they made me aware of these services. And so it was relatively quick. I reached out to them and said, let's schedule a visit. And they came out and spent several hours here going through all of our facilities. And as Mr. Urnich stated, they will provide us written reports on all of that. So
Great.
again, it's, I don't necessarily like to use the term free service, but let's say we're not going to be paying any extra for it.
Mhm.
So again, it's we want to make sure that we're staying ahead of the curve.
Thank you,
That's
Mr. Monroe. Mr. Urnich, anything to add?
I don't have anything else.
Okay, well, Mr. Monroe, now that you're on a roll, it's time for the CUE report, so would you like to give it to us?
I would. The first item I'm gonna report on is I do want to recognize our CUO, Mr. Urnich. This past Saturday, he completed a 50-mile ultra marathon. And that's, a marathon is quite a task, and to complete a 50-mile ultra marathon says a lot, not just physically but mentally. And we're all proud of him, and congratulations.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Congratulations, Mr.
That was
Urnich.
funny. Not in the car.
Did you do it with your, you do it with your Mad Hatter costume?
No, this was carrying as little as possible, just water and energy.
Good.
And for everyone, the word of the day and the word of the week is electrolytes. So
Yes.
I want to make sure we have plenty of those. But I originally was going to report on the Ohio Homeland Security and CISA visit, but because that's tied in with our SCADA upgrade and our IT and OT, we already discussed that, so I do not have anything further.
Okay. How about members with reports or miscellaneous? Mr. Ricky?
Yes, my notes here. Building Utilities Committee meeting has been rescheduled for June 24th, and I plan on attending that as our representative. Mrs. Gentry got me the email on that. I made a visit to our new engineering office, and I'll tell you what, I was very impressed. I wanted to see what we had purchased and the layout. The guys have made it a home and seem to be making it very functional. It must have been an engineering company before we acquired it, because it seems to be laid out pretty well. But I did make a visit there and just wanted to kick the tires, so to speak. And the last thing that I saw today, and it's a little bit disturbing, but I want to bring it up for our CUE to make sure that we are, and part of it has already come up in public comment, but it's a pretty nasty Facebook page from last night's meeting regarding the topics that took place and the power plant removal. One of the comments there kind of is almost driving panic that the drinking water needs to be checked. Everybody should have their drinking water checked. And it concerns me as a board member that there's people out there saying this stuff, and we need to be ahead of the game. We need to be making sure that everybody understands that the drinking water in this city is absolutely safe to drink. And people who put ill-advised or poorly thought out comments on Facebook like that, not knowing anything, need to show up at these meetings, quite honestly. That just bothers me, but I encourage our management team to review Facebook and look at those comments and maybe think about how we can put something out with our media people, with our social media people, just reconfirming the sincerity, the heart and soul that goes into providing safe drinking water to the people of Avon Lake and the surrounding communities, because that's the kind of stuff that just really can start a problem, but it also just bothers me that those people are making comments like that with no knowledge of really what the hell they're talking about. I rest. That's all I want to say.
Okay, any other members with comments, reports, et cetera? I think at this point then, I don't have any further report. Mr. Uranus, do we have any public speakers from TV land?
There are not, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we have public speakers here, again, 3-minute limit. Mr. Zimmerman, before you get started, if your remarks are going to be lengthy, I would suggest that you schedule a meeting with Mr. Monroe and Mr. Uranich to kind of sort it down to something that the board could address in a future meeting as a scheduled thing where there wouldn't be a limit on the time we can take on it. We're, not prepared for a big discussion about anything right now.
I
So
understand.
please go ahead.
You had said earlier, though, that I got 5 minutes, not, I
Three.
have 3 early and 5 at the end.
Is it 5?
No, it's 3.
It's 3.
3.
It's 3 and 3.
Yeah. I let you run on anyway. I just want to make sure we're going to address everything that you want, but since we don't have any preparation.
No, that's fine. I don't have any problems contacting Rob. My question, though, is along the lines that Mr. Ricky was saying, and that's the people are in panic about certain things. And one of them was the mercury problem that was discovered, and I don't know when that was discovered. Could you enlighten me on when that occurred?
I believe it was in the month of May, 2023.
And whoever was doing the testing, they continued to do testing, but found that it continued for 45 days, according to Mr. Schmier last night.
And that is incorrect. Based on the information we got from Ohio EPA. So first I would respond that the testing is done by the owner of the property under their
I
NIPID's
understand.
permit. Okay, just so everyone's clear on that. They have in their NIPID's permit, just like we have a NIPID's permit from our wastewater plant that we discharge to Lake Erie. Mercury, it's low level mercury limits. There's a daily limit, and whatever that number is set by Ohio EPA, and then there's a monthly average. It's my understanding, and I would ask Mr. Uranich to step in at any time if I'm stating anything incorrectly, but it was my understanding that they typically that's something that would get tested once a month, and for their monthly average, they took a sample and it was over, so then they have follow-up sampling. I don't recall the number of samples. I believe it was about 5 or 6 samples that they took because they were trying to get into compliance for the month, and at that point they knew that they weren't going to be in compliance. So I don't know the specifics of if they disconnected and stopped discharging. I will tell you that based on the information I reviewed and Mr. Uranich reviewed, their permit is based on when they were in full operation. So their limit would have been based on a lot more water being discharged.
2 million gallons per day, I believe.
Yeah, I believe their permit was for 2 million gallons a day. During that time, they were somewhere in the
40,000.
40,000 gallons is what they were, as opposed to 2 million. So the dilution factor isn't there. Bottom line is they were still over their permit limit. But it was for it to say that it was continually polluting for 45 straight days is not accurate, because they stopped sampling because they were out of compliance.
And that's
What they
under
did
the,
to resolve it?
I'm sorry.
Do you know what they did to resolve it?
I believe that they eventually stopped discharging, and that was I believe that was when they decided that they were going to disconnect from their
002?
yeah, or discharging from 002, because their explanation that was provided, and I did provide this documentation to Mr. Shamir. The documentation from Ohio EPA, they require a corrective action plan to be submitted by the permittee. They did submit a corrective action plan, and that was acceptable for Ohio EPA. And again, if you don't have that information, I mean, that's all public, record information. No, and I can provide that. Like I said, I've provided it to Mr. Shamir. So
I'm gonna ask a couple questions on behalf of where I think you're heading with it. In the case of the demolition of the power plant, somebody approved that demolition permit, which would have included whatever they're doing with drainage. Is that correct?
I believe they had to, because they had a NIPID's permit, so they operated their treatment system up until December, I believe it was.
So, but again, like if you're saying we're going to do a demolition plan, I'm sure it's very detailed, many pages long, what they're going to do. Mr. Zimmerman earlier asked about when they rerouted the water through this other thing. That must have been in the demolition plan, no?
I don't know that would have been specifically in the demolition plan, but there was they submitted a permit to install application with Ohio EPA. And what that is that a permit to install the additional treatment system or new treatment system to handle the rest of their site, because they were demoing, they wanted to demo the one on the south side and connect the retention pond into the storm system.
So does that go directly to answering the question of how did 002 come about?
Yeah, I guess
Okay,
it would.
so there's a path to go down. I also think it's important, based on Mr. Ricky's remarks, that Mr. Urinich, because we've already asked him these questions before, tell us about our product and its mercury content. You had mentioned before that we are at well below the limits on mercury in our, or maybe it's 0, I don't remember, but
We have non-detects in the drinking water.
So, I mean, when you're drinking the water, which we, do all the time.
I'm not disputing any of that.
No.
And the other point.
Well, this isn't to you, you know what I mean? This
But
is
this is
to,
to
well,
the
I'm
information that
assuming
people are
it
putting out
wasn't
there.
you on Facebook.
We don't want to panic.
Not me.
Right.
No, we don't want to panic. That's for sure.
Right, so the water's good, I drink
Water's
it all the
good.
time, and I always had the 3 years, or whatever. But I just wanted to point that out, because I had asked Mr. Urinich about that, because this has kind of been something that Mr. Shamir has been, kind of stirring up for a while, and I wanted to make sure that, well, the main point of what Avon Lake Regional Water does is not to be the guardian of Avon Lake, even though we protect the resource and our slogan. It's to provide clean water, to drinking water for people. So, the Great Lakes Coalition and many other environmental agencies like that, it's their job to do, runoff from farms and, all that phosphate that makes green algal blooms out in the west and so on and so forth. But our job principally is to make sure you get clean water. And I think we're doing a good job with that. Now, as far as these other things, I think that we're on it, and you'll see what you're looking for.
Thank you for your time.
Yep, thank you. Thanks for coming.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Urinich.
I just wanted to add one more thing about the levels of the mercury. So when they were in operation and they were putting out up to 2 million gallons of water per day, they were allowed an amount of mercury they were allowed to put in the lake. They were only putting out 40,000 gallons of water. You multiply that out to find out how much mercury was actually being released. It was minuscule compared to what it was when it was in operation. So that's something to take into consideration too, as far as what effect any of that would have actually had.
Because it's a percentage.
Right. Dilution factor. Huge.
And incidentally, I did watch Mr. Shamir's, presentation last night via Facebook. So he makes good points, and there are certainly some I's to dot and T's to cross. So we don't want anything that is going to be unusable as land, you know what I mean? So we have every interest that he has in mind. So. Okay, now we have I think we have a recommended motion for executive session. Okay.
Great.
Let's see, Mr. Rush, would you like to make that motion?
Certainly, before I make the motion, I do want to state the CUE does not anticipate any formal action by the board following the executive session. I move to meet an executive session as allowed by Ohio Revised Code Section 121.22 G2 and G3 to discuss the purchase and or sale of public property and pending or imminent court action, and to include the CUE, the CUO, Business and Financial Coordinator, Attorney Connie Carr, Representative from Dennis, and Representative from Manager Gavin at present.
Thank you, Mr. Rush. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Abram. We'll have discussion in just a minute, but I want to recognize that Mr. Steve Gross from Verdantis has just come into the room, and he's the one that's mentioned in the motion. So welcome, Mr. Gross. So is there any discussion on the motion to go into executive session? Okay, then we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Ricky?
Yes.
Mrs. Schnabel?
Yes.
Mr. Abram?
Aye.
Mr. Rush?
Yes.
And chairman votes yes. Thank you all for coming tonight. If you're not in the executive session, if you would clear the room, we would appreciate it. Let's take a 5-minute break for the board.